Okay. So, hello and welcome to CyberwearNFT. And so, welcome, Alexis.
Thank you. Hello.
We are super happy to hear your story today. And just a little bit of background about Alexis. He's got a background in computer science, graphic, and visuals. But he started in 2019 to work in the fashion field through a startup. And now it's head of SkinInvaders.
So, from gaming to digital fashion. Actually, the story is a bit longer than that. It's from gaming to fashion, and then eventually to digital fashion. How it started for me is as a teenager, I really loved video games. I played a lot, not so much anymore right now, but I used to play a lot, and I played so much that I really wanted to create and design video games. Actually, even before being a teenager, I learned programming on my old computer, and I was always drawn to program visual things. So of course, working in the games was really like a dream for me. And at that time, so 1997, I'm graduating high school, and I'm choosing to become a computer science engineer just to program video games. And at that time, you can see that the graphics are really crude, right? The image on the right, that I hope you see properly, is taken from an old game at that time, PlayStation 1. So in terms of, it's very immersive. Video games is like you start playing a video game and then you can play for hours because the story is so compelling, and it's much more immersive than a book or a movie because you're really part of it. But at that time, graphics are so crude that it's not very fashionable, right? We're talking about armors for male characters, sometimes really stereotyped garments for female characters. We'll remember like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. But still, it's very popular. And just to give you a glimpse of the popularity of games and their evolution from that time, this is what we have right now in games. So even if I didn't know at that time how games would evolve, you can see that today, because of the complexity that a game represents and the elements that can be featured on screen, the graphical side of it, and especially the fashion side of it, can take much more importance due to the technical capability of the game. So at that time, really focused on developing games, and that's how I start my career. I start working in a game company. I develop games, and then I become in charge of developing technology for other game companies. So other middleware that are going to be used by other developers to produce games in their turn. And then I worked for many years in that field, and I go on to work on other kind of domains, but still always the creative parts of games, and the 3D also elements stuck with me all that time. And during all that time, games which used to be like a pastime, a leisure, more for boys than for girls, and more for like teenage people than for grown-ups, really exploded. Today, it's a 200 billion industry. Obviously, it got a huge boost thanks for COVID. We estimate that even until 2025, the game market is going to grow another 30%. And on the planet today, there are more than 3 billion people playing video games. So that, comes as a shock for many people, but we all play at least one game in our life, whether it's Candy Crush, whether it's a more like hardcore kind of game. And as a comparison, there are almost 5 billion people on social media. So the people playing games are almost as important as the people on social media today in the world. And so the average player is not anymore like 15. It's not anymore a teenage boy spending his time in his bedroom. This stereotype of the gamer is not valid anymore. Now the average player is more like 30 years old. Maybe he has a kid, maybe he owns a house. And the gender parity is almost there in the world. We're like 40% of female players against 60% of male players, but in some regions and in Europe especially, we're almost at parity with 50-50. So it's really incredible that games have become like a mainstream media and have become very popular to every kind of people, whether they're young or old, whether they're boys or girls. The second part of my story is many years after that. 3 years from now, actually at Web Summit, which happened just last week, and I was there in Lisbon to enjoy. 3 years ago, Daniel Grieder, so the man you see on the left of the picture, who was at that time the CEO of PVH. So PVH is a large fashion group which owns Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. And so their CEO goes on the main stage at Web Summit, which is a very popular conference for startups, and talks about the future of fashion and innovating in fashion. And I'm really surprised that, you know, someone coming from the fashion space, not at all coming from the startup world, not into technology from the first look, is here on the main stage talking about how fashion brands could leverage the usage of 3D to become more innovative. And it really piques my interest because as someone who's really well versed in 3D, I'm really curious to understand what fashion brands can do with 3D. And basically, it's a very interesting talk that you can still find online, where Daniel Grieder explains that the value chain in fashion can be revolutionized by the use of digital techniques and by the use of 3D. And as you can see here on that slide, the fashion value chain is very long. It starts with the planning and then the design of the clothes. So of course, the work of all the creative designers that we know, and it ends at the consumer side, purchasing a garment or an accessory online or in retail. And bringing 3D in that whole value chain, explained by Mr. Grieder, is really helping brands being more efficient because it allows them to save time, and it also allows them to save money and resources because they can prototype their collection without to produce any sample. And that's really important in the world of today. But more than that, because of the flexibility of 3D, brands can also showcase images in 3D of garments on e-commerce, on product pages, even on social media, to represent the product that have not yet been produced and that are not yet available as a physical product. And as a gamer, as a former gamer, and as someone who knows like what's going on the consumer side, I'm really curious to understand how this, so the fashion part of 3D, is going to bridge with the consumer part that's already happening on the game side. If you remember, as I told you, games are super popular, and what is popular in a lot of games is actually purchasing skins, so purchasing outfits for your avatar, for your virtual identity. So here is a slide of is a picture of Fortnite, and that we all know Fortnite. We all heard about it, and a lot of people already played it. Fortnite got a huge boom with COVID because it became the place not only to play but also to meet your friends and to talk with them. You couldn't go out anymore. You couldn't hang out with your friends anymore. You couldn't go to the movies. You couldn't play sports anymore. But you could hang out with them on Fortnite. You could meet with them on Fortnite. You could play, but you could also just chat, hang around, create maps for the game, create challenges for other players. And of course, you could just boast your latest skin that you had purchased. And Fortnite is very well known for that because it's a free game, right? You don't have to pay to play it. And the only reason people pay in Fortnite is actually to purchase virtual items for their avatar. And Fortnite revenue, well, the revenue that Fortnite makes out of that is huge. Every year, it's around $4 to $5 billion that people spend in Fortnite just to acquire virtual items. So knowing about brands starting to use 3D, knowing about the impact of games, remember we're in 2019. Well, soon 2020. It's the beginning of COVID. We haven't talked about the metaverse doesn't exist. NFTs don't exist yet. But this, as brands and especially fashion brands cannot hold their virtual shows, their fashion shows anymore, as they cannot hold their showrooms anymore and showcase their collections. There's a huge push towards virtual presentation, to Zoom, of course, and also to games, because it becomes a way for brands, not only fashion brands, but for brands in general, and fashion in particular, to showcase their latest products. So what is the metaverse today? Well, nobody really knows. It became a thing like in the last couple of years. Interestingly, the characteristic of how metaverse is defined, like the fact that it's an online environment, it's a completely virtual world that is that is looking like the reality or not, or that is completely fantasized, that is a multiplayer. It's not a single player adventure, like you connect with other people. And you're represented by an avatar and you evolve in a persistent world. And basically all those characteristics, they are the characteristic of very famous games that are pictured here. So on the top left, Fortnite, that we already discussed. On the bottom right, Zepeto, which is like the metaverse in South Korea and in Asia, more globally, very popular over there. Bottom left is Roblox, very popular in the US. And top right is more of a newcomer, which is called Core, but as you can see, who has done already a partnership with deadmau5 and with other famous talents to showcase its capabilities. And so the metaverse, even if it's still a thing of the future, is very much represented by the games. And what happened in those games is that people, through their avatar, get a sense of a virtual identity. And what do they want to do with their virtual identity? They want to dress it up. They want to change identity based on their mood, based on their desire of the day. And all those games, although the environment, they really understood that. And from the beginning, they allowed people to customize their avatar with different items, with different garments, different outfits. And they became very popular because of that. So again, in those games, style is key, and brands notice that, and they start creating a collection for those games. So here you see on screen Moncler outfits in Fortnite again. You see Ralph Lauren outfits in Roblox, and Zara in Zepeto producing, digitizing some of their collection. Another thing that became popular around that time is NFTs. And what we learned from that is brands can become, or at least can be created out of not thin air, but out of a pure virtual positioning. And virtual brands appear, such as Ape, Bored Ape, and Artifact that you see on screen. So you're seeing now Ape and Artifact Clonex avatars, which are pure virtual brands, but with a clever marketing positioning, great visuals, and really an amazing storytelling. Those group of people managed to create such an engagement and such a following with their consumers that they actually created a brand. And Nike understood that very well, and which is probably one of the reasons why they acquired Artifact to become part of their roster of brands alongside the Converse and Jordan and Nike. So it's really an amazing time to notice where, on one hand, you have the real physical fashion brands who suddenly have a lot more opportunities to address thanks to the digital space. You have games that are more powerful than ever, that become, huge online worlds to explore, and sometimes attract brands to create virtual collection for them. And you have also virtual brands that are created and becoming very, very popular as well. So taking again on the side of the opportunities for brands in digital fashion, we've seen a lot of different plays, different scenarios. So we talked about like rationalizing design and production. That was the intent of Tommy Hilfiger that their CEO presented on stage at Web Summit 3 years ago. And actually, right now, Tommy Hilfiger is still using 3D. Most of their collection is produced in 3D and is physically produced only when the fashion show is happening, and only when consumers order from their e-commerce. They also released very recently a collection of 3D outfits for Ready Player Me avatar, so pushing the thing even further and selling outfits that are completely virtual and that represent and that are the digitization of a physical collection. Digital fashion also became a way for brands to reach out to game audiences. So we talked about the market of video games, that is like very important, but we haven't talked about the audience, the size of the audience of those games. For example, Fortnite is more like 300 million players each month. So each month, more than 300 million players actually play the game. On Roblox, it's like 200 million. Zepeto is more like 50 million. So it's, crazy amount of people every month, sometimes every day, playing those games. And it's a way for brands to address a different kind of audience, reconnecting to maybe a younger audience, and basically extending the reach of their marketing campaigns. Digital fashion also became a way to sell digital ownership of items. On the right, you see pieces from Dolce & Gabbana, the Genesi collection, and that was sold as NFTs, as pure virtual items. But when you were acquiring the NFT representing this outfit, you were also acquiring the physical piece that was to be designed and created in a second stage. And it's also a way for brands to customize garments before physical production. So, for example, the fabricant that do not produce physical fashion, but only digital, is using 3D to allow their customers to customize their collections. You still have a very quite a large gap between what brands are doing with 3D and what games are doing with 3D. Even if we've been talking about digital, about virtual, about the metaverse, about 3D in general, it's really two different worlds, as I was hinting at in the beginning, that really still don't understand each other very much. What you see on the left of the screen is what you see as a fashion designer using 3D tools. So top left is an old version of Clo 3D, a very famous design tool for fashion designers. So you start with cutting the pattern and then with sewing the pattern on a mannequin. You can still create beautiful images, beautiful renders with this software, as you can see in the bottom middle image, and that is out not of a video game but of a design tool for digital fashion designers. But this is one way to conceive of a digital fashion garment. Games and game artists, on the other hand, use different set of tools to create garments, and even if thanks to the evolution of computational graphics, the evolution of game consoles, the evolution of graphic cards, etc., games are more and more powerful and more capable. What you see on screen, so here on the right is Assassin's Creed Unity on the top, and on the bottom it's a specific plugin for real-time draping of garments. Can be hyper realistic. It looks almost like a real garment. The way it is constructed, the way it is built and designed is totally different. So it's not easy for a fashion designer today, even if he or she knows how to use 3D, to deploy that garment in a game, because the environment of a game is very different. And that's why we created SkinInvaders, the company that I've been running for a couple of years now, is to create a platform that allows brands to produce content and to distribute it in virtual worlds. And because of that evolution of fashion, of the importance to digitize the production pipeline of fashion, and because of the growth of virtual worlds and the metaverse, more generally speaking, I really believe that this is a sound value proposition for the future of brands, to be able to bring digital fashion and virtual content from fashion brands into virtual worlds. Our positioning is really to work with any kind of brand, also any kind of platform that has content to produce, in order to produce it according to the specification and the constraints of a game, of a gaming virtual environment, even if it's an avatar platform like a Clonex or Ready Player Me, and distribute that content into the platforms that have been selected by the brand. SkinInvaders has been working for a couple of years now with the brands that you see at the bottom of your screen. And even in the case of Zara, we designed some of their latest collection on Zepeto. And we see more and more brands doing the jump, because that's where the audience of fashion brands are spending a lot of time in games, in those virtual environments, playing with their virtual identity. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for allowing me to describe all that to you. And I'm happy to answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting for me. And yeah, so what I was trying to understand is that your startup is a kind of bridge between what is digital fashion for Metaverse and what is digital fashion for games. So you can allow these two industries to work together, right?
Exactly.
But how?
So if you remember the slide of the value chain of a brand, right now when we create a collection for, let's say, Zara or for DKNY, our interlocutors at the brand level are the marketing teams. So we're not talking to, well, we rarely talk with designers, we rarely talk with the production team of a brand. We talk with the marketing teams because they see virtual worlds, they see games as a different distribution channel. Just like, you know, e-commerce, social media appeared 10 years ago, and at the very beginning it was very new for fashion people. They didn't really understand what was the opportunity, but eventually the consumer demand made it so that it became something that they had to act upon. So because of the consumer demand, fashion brands had to take e-commerce seriously, had to take social media seriously, and had to adapt in order to create their own e-commerce store, their own production team to produce content for social media, right? You don't distribute on social media the same kind of images that you distribute for a print campaign or for an advertising campaign that's going to appear in the metro, for example. So you have to adapt to those new distribution channel and create the content that is relevant for that channel. And for games, actually, brands are very curious about games. They want to be there, and players want them to be there, because for anyone playing a game where you can actually dress up your avatar just the way you want, it's only natural that you would like to dress up your avatar with the brand that you love, right? So there is this kind of like common desire to be featured in the same space, but brands still don't know yet how to do that. So we are here to help them, and we're here to help them learn how it works. And eventually, the interest will grow from marketing towards the design and the production part of a brand, because on their own, they will use 3D to produce assets that we will be able to reuse in our pipeline to produce the game assets that will be distributed in the games. So that's really our vision for the next years to come.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. There is Frankie, so
yes,
maybe, yeah.
Hello, Alexis. Thank you so much for joining us. So I wanted to know, what do you see? You mentioned social media, and now you have all sorts of sort of social media, digital marketing teams, new roles that have appeared to support the marketing function of social media. Same thing with e-commerce. What do you see as the new roles of the metaverse and games within a company?
You mean on the side of fashion brands?
Yeah, so maybe at the beginning they will outsource and use an agency, and eventually they might say, this is so important that we need to hire people internally. What do you see those roles as being is one question. And then the second question is, if there is such a role as a game fashion designer, do they actually need to know how to create fashion? Do they need to know how to use Clo3D, Marvelous Designer, or is that irrelevant?
Yeah, so those are really good questions. Starting with the latter, the digital fashion actually is becoming in a way, the convergence of traditional fashion designers going 3D and using 3D tools to be able to more easily create collections. Actually, I know now a lot of fashion schools teaching clothes 3D because it's important for newcomers in that space, young fashion designers to master that tool. And because of the evolution of the complexity of games, traditional game artists, traditional character artists, as we call them, also started to use some tools, typically used by fashion designers, to create outfits for game characters. So as you said, actually, a game artist use Marvelous Designer. Sometimes they use Cloud 3D to create outfits for the character of a game. So not in every game, because those tools are used to create very detailed outfits. So it only makes sense when you're creating a game that is going to be very realistic, even if it's a futuristic game. But if it's realistic enough, then it's worth having all those details in the outfits that you're crafting. And so you really see a convergence of both the fashion side and the game side starting to use kind of the same tools and starting to use, or at least trying to understand, the language of each other. And as you said, some artists from the game side, know how to cut patterns, because they had to learn that in order to reproduce the clothes that they had imagined in the first place. Now, coming back to your first question, which was around the roles and the evolution of the roles in fashion brands towards the metaverse. Right now, you have a lot of agencies that exist on the market to help brands create collections, create experiences in games. So, all the popular activations that we've seen of fashion brands in Roblox, for example, it's not Roblox nor the fashion brand itself that has created those experiences. It's really agencies whose work is to create and to craft branded experiences. And it's fine, because that's the way it's supposed to be. But with brands eventually going more and more digital, and again, digitizing this whole value chain, I think it will make sense for them to be more aware of what are the trends, what are the platforms that are very popular for the people playing games. The most common question that we are being asked by a brand is not how to do it, is most likely to be, this is my core audience. So it's, I don't know, 35-year-old girl from the US, let's say. And they want to know which game, which metaverse out there fits the most with this targeted audience. And our job is to understand the target audience of the brand and to help them, to advise them on which metaverse to address in order to match the two audiences. And I think that's how brands will become more, let's say, expert regarding the metaverse. I'm not sure that in the end, their job will be to create game-ready content, because they already have so much to do with the production of physical products. So I'm not convinced that the work that we're doing, not as an agency, but as a platform developer, will be integrated at some point in a fashion brand. But for sure, the work that we do right now, really advising a brand on how to use our platform to discuss with the games, to discuss with the 3D artists that are producing the content, we will do less and less, because they will be more experts in and more knowledgeable in the way of how you create a 3D content and how you understand the opportunities on the gaming side. And like a few months from now, or at the end of last year, a buzzword was the chief metaverse officer role. And suddenly a lot of brands appointed chief metaverse officers in their organization. And it's the role of those people to deconstruct the opportunities around the virtual fashion, deconstruct the opportunities around NFTs and the metaverse, and really bring a new kind of education into a fashion brand, so that again, those opportunities are more obvious, and the bridge is quicker to be established.
I have one more question, which is, so when you are advising a brand on which platform to go on for their audience, do you think it's better to go super niche and to focus on the very few, you know, female gamers who are in crypto and into NFTs and Metaverse, and go fully into that market, fully into the gaming, Metaverse, NFT purchasing with crypto? Or do you go for a sort of hybrid, a softer approach of sort of gamifying what already exists and having a phygital approach where you have the physical product with a little bit of a gamified element, but it's not fully for games, but it sort of touches on that world?
Yeah, it really depends on the strategy of the brand. Some brands want to try and trial different options before devising a real strategy for the metaverse and for virtual fashion. So we are going to advise for, let's say, more generalist approaches. So creating collections for Roblox or for Zepeto, creating collection for Ready Player Me avatars, for example, so that it allows for a wider dissemination, let's say. But some brands also have a very precise idea of what they want to do. And for example, there are brands who really want to unlock the potential of Web3 and are really curious about how they can create that direct link between them and consumers for a digital product, using NFTs for example, kind of subscription models, or like returning customers, and instead of having this this card that you carry and that you always lose, about like, I am a member of this group of super fans of the brand. You're extended an NFT that gives you access to exclusive products or exclusive experiences. So it really depends on the strategy of the brand. There's no like good or bad answer. Some brands want to do like super niche things, as you said, because they are more edgy, for example, or because they want to target a specific group of people. And I think, at first it doesn't really matter what you start with, because eventually it becomes a strategy after a few trials, after understanding how your consumer base reacts to the products you put on the market, whether they're digital or virtual, and the kind of engagement that you're able to create. So yes, there are some brands who are going to create phygital activations, where, so it was the case of Puma, for example, we worked with in Zepeto again, where they had a special drop launched in Foot Locker stores, and we created the equivalent of the collection inside Zepeto. And so there were links between the two, and if you went to the store, you could get a code, and that code would unlock a specific virtual item that did not exist and wasn't accessible otherwise. There are brands that are going to focus on creating NFT collections. We've seen a few, and there are brands that are going to focus on more, let's say, generalist metaverses like Roblox, and create experiences there. So it's only a matter of like, what's the ultimate strategy, what's the ultimate goal of the brand, and how they want to reconnect their physical/retail business model with the virtual world.
Great. Well, one last question, which is to do with identity. So fashion is usually about sort of self-expression. Do you see a lot of a difference between the real world fashion and the game fashion? And also the word skins, is that to say that this is, when you buy a skin, is that a cosmetic, an expression of self-identity, or is there utility in the game that gives the gamer superpowers to go up levels? Like, and how do you see men and women differing in their approach and desire to purchase those skins or digital fashion?
I think the question around identity and self-expression really resolves itself the same way, whether we're talking about the physical world or we're talking about the virtual world. It may not be the same in terms of aesthetics, but the rationale of it, it's all the same. The way you see players dressing up their avatars, dressing up their characters with different outfits, changing that outfit like every game or every day or whatever, really resonates with the way we dress up and we see clothes as an extension of our personality or our mood or our identity for a given occasion, right? And really it's only the same. I don't see any difference. What's interesting though is that it started as a divide in terms of aesthetics between real fashion and virtual fashion. For technical reasons, fashion in virtual spaces was more exuberant, extravagant, using more like flashy colors, shapes that were not as natural as the ones you would see in a physical collection. But more and more, the two blended together, and you're seeing brands actually creating garments that kind of resonate with the aesthetics of the virtual fashion. I think, I don't remember which brand it was, but at some point I saw an ad for a collection of like kind of semi-transparent, iridescent garments that really looked like the Fabricant iridescent dress that was sold in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, or 20, I don't remember the year exactly, but that was the first virtual fashion dress sold on the blockchain. And you understood that the real fashion got inspiration from the virtual world. So, and I think that's going to happen again. We're going to see that happening more and more. And then in terms of skins, no, actually those skins, those outfits are purely aesthetic and don't have any effect in the game. Gamers are very wary of any item that you could purchase and that would give you like advantage within the game. They don't like that. It's usually the game that defines its own set of rules, and they don't like pet win games. So actually, skins in Fortnite don't have any effect. Whether you're dressed up as Superman or as Darth Vader or as Son Goku from Dragon Ball Z, doesn't change anything. It's not going to change the kind of attacks or the kind of power that you have in the game. It's purely aesthetical, and that's what's crazy about it, is that even if those items don't have any effect in the game, people still buy them because they want to look different and they want to also adapt their look with whatever they feel like.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for answering my questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexis. It was really interesting.